Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of my possible series here. Today I'm going to be talking about just how to have fun playing games. Pretty simple. Pretty simple concept anyway, not necessarily simple in execution. This series, if it becomes one, as I have to say, was inspired by Phil the Glacial Geek. He's a Warhammer YouTuber. He makes great stuff. So check him out. And so I've gone through I've gone through phases like a number of times as I've been playing, not just Magic, I mean, it's specifically Magic, but a lot of different games. Just basically like how to just continue to enjoy the game and be motivated to do it. I think I'm sure different people have different reasons for playing a game, right? It's like some people are entirely about winning. Some people just want to show up and hang out and have fun with their friends. And there's probably a space for each one of those types of people within the game. I think I myself, I just like to have good games. Okay, I have much more fun if losing a very close game and one that had a lot of interesting interactions than I do just steamrolling somebody and winning. Like I don't feel good doing that, you know? It feels better than getting steamrolled myself. So I've noticed I've go through these kind of patterns, right? And just to give you an example, or to give you context, most recently, I wonder if you guys can hear my cat meowing in the background. I'm trying to figure out what's bothering her. Anyway, so to give you context, what? Oh my gosh! Of course she would start meowing. Let's see. I had planned to go to this PPTQ with a friend of mine, and then as it came closer, I was just less and less excited about going, because just watching the metagame and just knowing that Teamer Energy is all over the place, and we did another PPTQ about a month ago, and my deck didn't do well against the Teamer Energy decks. I'm playing basically with a few tweaks. I'm playing the Pirate God deck that Saffron Olive put together. You can check that out on MTG Goldfish, but pretty much the same list that he's using, just a few slight tweaks to it that he used. And it just didn't feel like I had a very good matchup against Teamer because there's so much of the quick removal that, the Pirate God deck, you basically put out cheap creatures that have effects that you need to stay alive until you can drop the bomb of the Scarab God. And it works very well against most decks, but Teamer just didn't have a good feeling about it because, you play like a Kite Sail Freebooter and you take a card out of the hand and then it's like, bam, a Braid. The card goes back to their hand. You play Hostage Taker, boom, Harness Lightning, goes back to their hand. So you're doing these 1-for-1s and then it's kind of a delay rather than really actually doing anything. It just didn't feel good. And maybe it's my own stubbornness. Maybe I'm scrub, as it were. That I didn't want to. I spent all this money on these Scarab Gods. I really like this deck. I've been playing it for a long time. I thought it was great. Most decks I play against, I had a great time. So I didn't want to just go, okay, well now I'm going Teamer Energy because that's what it is. I didn't want to do that. So I just didn't feel like going to this PPTQ. And I played a guy at F&M who was playing Teamer. And he just crushed me because, like I said, everything I put out was a Braided or Harness Lightning, and that was like the end of it. Somewhere I read an article on maybe like Channel Fireball or something that was, the problem with energy, and that really shows up against my deck because we're just one. It starts out with me 1-for-1ing them, right? It's like I'll play a creature and they'll kill it, and I'll kill their creatures like Fatal Push or whatever. But because of the energy mechanic, they're still building up energy. So they are building up a resource at the same time that they were 1-for-1ing each other. And so they end up on top because they can play a card that can utilize this energy, whereas I have no I have no buildup. Uh, so to me, it just wasn't fun. It's just not fun playing against the energy decks. And I guess one of my there's a few ways to look at it. You can say, well, adapting to the metagame is part of what Magic is about, and a lot of people seem to think that that's okay or that that's cool. But I actually, it's a good thing I'm going to call this Ramble on, because man, I'm going to ramble on. I'm going to be all over the place. But basically, after playing against this teamer deck and feeling bummed about it, I was like, I got to figure out what's going on in my own head here and how I feel about the game. So I need to do some research. So I started doing some reading of some like game theory stuff online, and like what makes a good game. Because basically I was like, I wanted to find out what makes a good game of Magic the Gathering, right? And I didn't get any real good answers on that. Just searching for what makes a good game of Magic the Gathering didn't pop up any like specific answers. Okay, I need to go grab another box. I'll BRB. That's focus, not pause. So after that bad beat, if you will, I kind of had to go through this introspective journey, which I've done a few times. Deciding, because let's see, it goes like this. You got a metagame. And also, by the way, I also play Warhammer, and this applies to that as well. Is that you've got a metagame, and basically the the pros or the hardcore competitive people are testing everything out against the other things in the metagame. So it seems like as an individual player, there's not a lot you can do. It's not like let's see the preface here. For me, I like to be able to brew my own decks, right? I just always wanted to be that guy, and I find it really fun to do because I want to use my own. I guess I should go back around here. Go back to what I was saying earlier. So part of why I like to play these games is I want to use my own ingenuity to come up with answers, right? So when you're looking at constructed Magic, it seems like it can be difficult or impossible to do that, because if I myself as an individual saying to myself, I want to come up with a deck that's going to beat Teamer Energy, well, I'm up against millions of people who have decided that Teamer Energy is the best deck by place testing. Thousands of hours of place testing, millions of people, and here I am, just this one guy who's like, all right, I want to come up with a deck that is going to beat this thing. It's not impossible, but when you think about the odds of that happening, as a person, I have to kind of step back and go, is this really worth it? Like how many hours do I have to put into this, and how much time and all that, and is it even worth it to make my goal to try to combat this thing? And the answer is no, it's probably not, right? It's probably not. But then I put all this money and time into this Pyro God deck, and I really like it. So what do I do, right? Well, the answer I came up with is just keep going. And I know that sounds really lame. It's like, oh, just keep going, just keep trying. No, but it's like I just had to change my perspective of what I'm going into these events for. If I'm gonna have this deck and I'm going to enjoy playing it, then I just need to be okay with that and be okay. For instance, it's been super frustrating because, I go to F&M regularly. I'm not a big time. I'm not like a super competitive, but I get bummed when I don't win, right? So I've had this string of like second or third place finishes, and what would bum me out about it is this is the quality of gameplay, really, because I'd go 2-1, like I've gone like 2-1 almost every night, and two of those matches I usually just crush my opponent, like just mop the floor with them, and then that last one I play the other person that's in first place and I get mopped, right? Whether it's one time it was black aggro and I hadn't seen that before, wasn't sure what to do about it. Then Teamer Energy might get me, or Pummeler, stuff like that. And it just feels bad when you go up against somebody's really quick deck and you want this like interesting game out of it, and you've been doing well that night, and then you just get smashed, right? So that sucks. Feels bad. And but I have to take a step back and just recognize what the game is. That you can't. I guess the definition of a scrub here is, I always kind of wondered what scrub really meant. Is that a scrub expects the game to conform to their ideas, right? That they have this preset of rules. Where did I get this stuff from? I can't reference it directly who the guy is. He's a game designer and also was a Street Fighter, pro player. And he wrote a free book, and I was just kind of looking over it, and it was like Playing to Win or something, I think was the name of his blog article. And he was just describing this idea of a scrub, and a scrub is, the person who goes like, oh, well, Teamer Energy is like unbeatable, so I just don't want to play the game anymore. It's like a scrub has created that sense of rules that the game should not have, basically that Teamer Energy just shouldn't be a thing in the game, and maybe it shouldn't be, maybe there should be a ban, but it is what it is now. So if you just like, if I get my butt kicked by Teamer Energy and my answer is, oh, well, Teamer Energy is OP, so screw this game, that's scrub, right? But if I change my attitude about it, then I can go back to it and still enjoy the game. So all in from Friday night into Saturday night when we had another standard tournament, I just decided, I'm going to change my perspective. I'm not going to worry about the fact that whether I go 2-1 or not, and I'm just going to play, and I'm going to use my skill to try to beat this guy with the Teamer Energy deck. And the good news is I came in with a better attitude, and I tied him. So that was pretty cool. He took the first game, and then we had two, interesting games after that. And that was satisfying. It's like I had changed my perspective. It wasn't all about winning, and I just wanted to go. I also thought about changing some cards in my deck. Like I talked to a friend who mentioned, he said God Pharaoh's Gift is like crushing Teamer Energy, which sounds nice. But if I feel like if that was really true, that it really was like a great matchup as that, we would be seeing more of those decks winning. That's a story for another time. So I thought about doing that, and then I was like, I'm not gonna stress. I just like didn't want to stress over it. It's easy to get obsessed about these things. I don't know if that's just me or that's anybody in the gaming world. It's like, it's so easy to get obsessed over your game. So I just decided to go back into it with a healthy attitude of just like, I'm just going to play the game, And I still ended up getting second because we tied, but he had one less game loss than me, annoying. He didn't. I mean, we had the same amount of, our match records were the same, but his game loss record was different. So that was, whatever. It's annoying, but I just wanted it with the fact that I wanted to play that same deck and try to be as good as I can with it. If it's not the greatest deck in the world, if it's not the greatest deck in the metagame, like, it's not gonna sweat it, because that stuff happens. It just happens. So that's just kind of what I went through recently. But the bigger like revelation I got going through all this was like, I took a moment to really think about why do I play these games? What do I want out of it, right? And the fact is that I think, me personally, I just want good games. I want good games. I want experience and my skill and experience to mean something, okay? Now, what I mean by that is, to use another example from Magic, is back when that Saheeli combo thing was happening, okay? And also Aetherworks, Marvel. There are these two guys at the store that I go to. They're young kids, and they really don't have a great handle on the game. They make lots of mistakes, like, they do a lot of like, oh, I tapped my mana wrong, or I forgot to draw a card. Just young kids who really don't have a lot of experience, and they were beating me. Like, and I've been playing for a grand total of something like 10 years. I've recently been back in the game for 2 years. And, when like somebody who doesn't know how to play the game, who literally like forgets to tap and untap their mana and forgets to draw a card and all that stuff is like, bam, here's the combo, I win. That doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good. So, but there's two sides to that where, maybe one of those kids could never beat me without that combo. You know what I mean? So there is that side to it, but I just personally, I don't think that's a good place for the game to be in, is that you just have instant win combo that like kids who don't even know how to play the game can beat pros with. Like it doesn't seem right. So let's see, where was I? Let's see, film band, meta game. Oh yeah, what do I want out of the game? Okay, so I got back into Magic after years and years. Let's see, just background for my Magic playing. I started back in Revised, 92, or not 92, the game hadn't even been released, and I think 94 probably started playing right after all the good stuff, because right when it became mass produced, I used to buy my cards in Barnes & Noble, because I didn't know any better at the time. I buy them in the mall at Barnes & Noble and at the computer game store. I buy my packs of Revised. So basically, I just barely missed all the good stuff, because I think either the Legends or the Dark was out when I started playing, but I didn't have a local game store to go to pick those up. Although I did, hey, I got the dual lands, so I sold them for those bad boys for pennies probably. I remember trading for one. It's $15. So, and we all thought that it was insane how there was a card that was worth, get it, the Black Lotus was worth an astounding $250. We all thought that was insane, and it was like this mythical thing even back then. Ooh, Gisela. Right, so when I got back in the game, I just basically, I think I needed something else in my life at the time other than what I had. My work was stressing me out. Just need another outlet. And it was great to get back in the game. Like, if at first it was awesome, and I didn't care that I was going to F&M and getting my butt kicked, because I was just learning the game again. It took me at least a month, if not longer, to actually win an F&M, even with like 4 people being there. See, this is a promo. Do I want to put my promos with? There's always one of those things you have to think about. This is a promo like they put in those 3-packs at Target or whatever. And can I get it focused? No, I can't. Probably not. It's like, do I want to put that in a separate promo pile, or do I want to put it in the Kaladesh stuff? For now, I'm thinking put it in the Kaladesh stuff, like next to the other Bristling Hydras. That's what I'm going with for now. So, right, I got back into the game just because I needed that outlet, like the social and the just outlet of really fun. So my motivation to play the game is fun, but to be more specific, it's that partially I think it's about control. It's like a game is something that you have control over. In other words, like your skill and whatnot is reflected as you play the game, whereas your skill is not necessarily, your skill and experience is not necessarily reflected in how you are treated at your job, or how other things in your life work out. So a game kind of gives you an opportunity to be more in control of results. I think that's what I wanted out of it. And I also just want to play generally good games. And so, if that's where I think I'm at, and whether or not other people are there, that's why they do it. That's I mean, that's a good question that I'd love to hear from people. Just why do you play games in general? So right, so I got back into it for that. So that's where it comes down to. It's like I've been through. I got back into the game at a rough time because this standard for the last couple of years has been whoo-wee, right? I mean, there's been bannings for the first time in like a decade, and it's just generally been rough. Because when I first jumped in, everyone had their Khans of Tarkir was still in, and everyone had their fetch lands, and it wasn't that long before it was going to rotate out. It was less than a year, so I wasn't about to splurge on these fetch lands just to be competitive, right? So first it was that, and then we moved into, collected company time, where I was doing mono white humans, and it was just like I'm talking about now, where I'd crush fools, okay? Crush fools my first 2 matches. Then the last third match of the day, I played this dude who was playing collected company, and he was a real hardcore competitive guy, and he would just crush me. Felt bad. This dude, he's much more competitive than I have. Has a lot more money than I have. I'm not. I'm just bringing that out as a point. I'm not blaming this dude for having more money than me. Like, believe me. But I've played him. I wouldn't be surprised if I've played him 100 times and beaten him twice, right? I mean, that's just how it is. So, but when I always wanted to brew my own decks, right? And I'd deal with that frustration. And then there's those people telling you like, well, if you're not playing the top meta, you're gonna lose. Like, you have no chance. And to some extent that is true. To some extent it's not, but to some extent it is. It's just facts. I mean, it depends on kind of what level you're playing at, and I always wanted to be the guy who would like create the cool brew and be able to take down the top deck. And then I found that it just wasn't. I don't think it was really the cost benefit wasn't there. I might be able to come up with some sweet deck, but it would take me like days and days and days straight of messing around and playtesting and stuff like that, just as one person. And then even then, often I would still just get smashed. And man, does that feel bad when you spent days and days, like say you spent 30 hours putting a new deck together and playtesting it, and then you go back and try it out in the real world, and it just gets squished. Like, feels bad, right? So that's not the life I want to live either, right? So I want to be a deck brewer, but the reason I started playing at FNM, I'm not like, I don't know, I'm a somewhat competitive guy. But I care much more about having good games than I care about my wins and losses, but I do get bummed when I lose, right? So I ended up playing FNMs because that was an easy way to get more games in. Like, at least in my area, if I wanted to play, I needed to play FNM because that's where you're going to find people who want to sit down and play a bunch of games in a row, right? So, I mean, that's why I do it. So the same applies to when I got back into Warhammer. Now I'm trying to think. I think I basically got back into Warhammer just because I needed another outlet than Magic, right? It's kind of funny. It's like Magic wasn't really satisfying my needs, so I'm like, I'm gonna get back into Warhammer, and I feel like that's been more satisfying overall. Magic still, I have a lot of fun playing Magic, and I'm still doing it. But I've found Warhammer to be easier to play in the sense of just trying to have fun. But the flip side to that is I've also played in a few Warhammer tournaments because of that reason of just wanting to play more games. So where can I get more games in? Go to a tournament. And then all the bad stuff, you get all the bad stuff there that is associated with competitiveness and tournaments. I mean, I've run the gamut of like some decent people to play and some people that are just complete assholes. Like, the only thing that they're there to do is to win. And they don't get, there's no like giving your opponent the benefit of the doubt or even like trying to have a good game. I mean, there's just people that you'll meet in tournaments who are just, they'll do anything to beat you. And it's, honestly, it gets pretty disgusting. So that's not the life. That's not the life that's for me either. I just want to play some games and have a good time, right? Just see. Do I have an almond cat stack over here? So I had to like assess the situation essentially, and I've had to do it a few times. And I had to do it again this weekend. I had to just basically assess where I'm at with my game playing. Like, am I doing it for the right reasons? What do I want out of my games, right? As far as Magic is concerned, I'm kind of focusing more on the limited, and I've been having a great time in this draft league at my local game store, Tactical Advantage. We meet once a week, and I feel like that's really my jam. That's my place because it's still, whoever's going to win is still dependent on their polls, like PULL. What they get out of the packs is still a factor, but it seems much more skill dependent because you're drawing from the same pool of cards. And I like that. So I kind of found my outlet, I think, for what makes the game enjoyable for me. But I still go to, I still build a standard deck because I like looking at the new cards. Like, I was so excited about the Pirates. And I'm like, okay, well, these are the decks I want to play. So I have to kind of remember when I get frustrated with Constructed that an EDH is a whole nother deal. That my jam is limited, right? That's what appeals to my personality, but then I know people who really hate limited because of the randomness. They just hate that, and that's where Constructed is their jam. So, however, like I said, I still like to build decks, right? And look at cards, and I just like to brew. But the brewing has been really depressing because usually my brews just get stomped, right? Does that mean I'm bad at brewing? Maybe. But, or maybe I can go into it with the wrong attitude. Maybe I need to be able to say, well, I'm going to take my brew to F&M and I'm not going to worry about how many wins I get because this is my first time out with my brew. So, there's multiple ways to look at it. So I do like to brew, though. So it gets frustrating when I go to events, constructed events, and my brew don't do so good, right? Well, therein is kind of a problem. I think a problem with the environment of Magic the Gathering, and also the environment applies to Warhammer with this whole thing with metagame. And I didn't really realize this till I started reading that Play to Win article and some other comments that some other people had made, is that having such a focus on the metagame makes it so that like the metagame and manipulating the metagame becomes more important than how you actually play the game. So now you can't say that like, some 12-year-old scrub is gonna roll into, or just 12-year-old kid is going to roll in and, like, crush the Pro Tour. It's probably not going to happen unless he's really good, But I just mean, like, the kid I'm talking about barely knows how to play the game. But, I mean, Saheeli combo kind of makes it that way. 12-year-old kid rolls in, he just happens to draw the right cards at the right time, and he just crushes the field, right? Because it just happens to be this you-win combo. And so then you have to metagame around that. So, in other words, it becomes more about what you put in your deck than it does about how well you play the game. Now, deck building is an important part of the game, and picking your armies for Warhammer is an important part of the game. So those definitely need to be part of the game, right? But I personally think, and other people, if other people disagree or have different perspectives, I'd love to hear from them. The way you play the game should be more important than what you bring to the table. they're related. You know, you can't just bring all the weakest troops or all the weakest cards. Like, oh, well, all I've got is commons, but I should still be able to win. You know, that may not. That's probably sort of a scrub. That's scrubby right there, right? But if so if the main problem with the metagame being more important is that, like I said, and that at that point an individual's decisions don't matter very much, because the metagame is being discovered by these pros and playtesters, and you as an individual can't just. There's not a lot you can do, or it's not. It may be possible that one guy's going to be in his like basement, you know, throwing like slinging cards, and he's going to figure out the magic way to beat a deck, but it's very, very, very unlikely, and it's definitely not. It's just not worth the time at that point. So then what you have is if metagame decisions are what dominates your game, then the individual has nothing to do to like improve their game experience. All they can do is go look at what other people have done and copy that, and in order to hope to compete, right? How they play as an individual, it doesn't mean nothing. Their skill level and all that, and how they play the game doesn't mean zero, but it begins to mean a lot less, which to a person like me is very disappointing, right? That's not why I play games. I play games to have control over the situation, have my have the work and time that I've put into like designing my deck or designing my army actually matter, you know? And I'm sure that I'm not the minority on that, right? So, am I still talking about something that is cohesive and makes sense? I don't know. I didn't go into this that necessarily into this necessarily expecting it to. I have considered that if I keep doing this is of course just the beginning, where I was just like, just to make it simple and actually create some content, I'm just gonna throw down and I'm just gonna start talking, right? So, and I, you know, when I go back and look at these videos, or if I go back and look at comments on them, I may actually like reorganize a little bit better, you know, give myself a list of things to talk about and points to make in some kind of cohesive order. So that's I got through the commentary of like why I play the games, and why this whole metagame thing like makes me uncomfortable, and why I think it's. I mean, do I want to? I think it's bad for the games. I think it is. If your competitive scene is dominated by just like, you know, it's more, like I said, it's more about what deck you pick and whether you're copying someone else's list than how people actually play the game. You know, that kind of sucks. Now, obviously, there are people that are much better at the game and they can like go out there and win with anything, but they're few and far between, right? Because the problem isn't really, I don't think the problem is really how it affects the Pro Tour. The Pro Tour guys can do their thing, and we'll figure out who's more skilled, right? Because they all have the same information and they have all that. But then when it trickles down into the real world, like your FNMs and whatnot, not everybody has the same resources, and so the same resources, or not even the same like kind of view of the game. So for instance, by view of the game, I mean wanting to brew decks, right? Having all this. So let's say the Pro Tour is fine the way it is, like it can have its metagame and all that, but that trickles down into just FNMs where like. You know, people come in and like me, who tried to play with jank brews all the time, or the people that I run into that try to play with their jank brews, and I just destroy them, right? And you know, I guess I don't want them to come in and just crush me out of hand, but I don't want it to be like a game where they have to either you know, play basically. Just we don't want it to be. What am I trying to say here? Because, yeah, if it's new people and they have a jank brew, I still want to beat them because, like I said, I want my experience to mean something. But I don't want it to be a thing where you either have to conform to getting to net decking. It's like you either net deck or you lose. that sort of thing. Which it seems like it. It seems like it is. It seems like it is. It's not entirely. It's not 100%. There's one guy in particular who like always plays crazy brews, and sometimes he does really well with them, but I don't know that in the end he would be competing, or his record would be good against those net decks. You know what I mean? So I don't think. I guess what I'm saying is this whole metagame net deck environment I do not think is good for the game. So that is a point right there. I don't think it's good for the game. Same for Warhammer. Being able to go on the line and find out that like, oh well, if I copy janky list where like create my Space Wolves army, but it's not really Space Wolves, or it's Space Wolves because I have like a Space Wolf commander, but then I have like my White Scars bikers and blah blah blah. That environment is, maybe it's good for top level tournaments, maybe it makes sense there, but then the way it trickles down into your just everyday players' life like sucks. It's not good for the game. Now the bigger issue there, and probably what companies like Wizards is struggling with, and I can understand why they are, is that how do you change that? Because you can't. There's no way to just censor that information. I think it's unfortunate what they did with MTG Goldfish when they, cut down the amount of like league results they post, because now it's harder to get information about what the metagame is. But I do get why they tried it, because they were trying, also with the changing the Pro Tour time, they were trying to make it so that the metagame didn't get as oppressive as I'm talking about. So at least their hearts were in the right place. They were trying to do the right thing to make the game more open. But in the end, I think in both cases, it turned out to be a bad decision, because having the Pro Tour later actually it didn't prevent the metagame from being solved for longer like they hope. It actually just meant that we went into the Pro Tour with a more established metagame than ever, which is, super unfortunate. So the question is, I think everyone agrees that having an easily solved metagame, or having a solved metagame and not having a variety, we all want variety, right? I think everyone wants that. I want to be able to go to a tournament and play a bunch of different decks. I don't want to just play Teamer Energy all day. Like when I went to the PPTQ, I think half the decks I played were Teamer Energy. Now, granted, I got stopped from some token decks that I wasn't prepared for, because I just didn't know that was really going to be a thing. So good on those people for bringing those. But everyone wants variety, and it's the same thing with Warhammer. You don't want to go to a Warhammer tournament and face everybody playing the same army. That would be incredibly boring. But the problem is that information is out there. There's no stopping it, right? Because even if Wizards told MTG Goldfish they can't post any results anymore, like that information is going to get out there, because we have the internet now. So whoever's at the tournament, somebody can write that information down and they can pass it on to the rest of the world. So it's kind of an all or nothing. I think it's kind of an all or nothing thing. Since it can't be nothing, it needs to be all. Everyone needs to have all the information, because otherwise some people are going to have some of the information, which is going to be even worse, because those people have a particular advantage, right? So it'd be nice if we could get rid of this metagame thing, but for the moment, I don't know how you would, right? The only real way to do that would be, get rid of the Pro Tour altogether, or, well, all of the professional tours, but, that ain't happening. Yeah, I think the only way to have a diverse metagame is just the way the cards are designed, and it seems like they're moving in that direction. The problem now is, and I think a lot of people have touched on it, and I think they're right, that Kaladesh block just screwed everything up. It really did, because it's the energy mechanic is too powerful. And I mentioned that earlier as to why that is because you are creating a resource that anybody who's not playing energy cannot keep up with, because their cards do not create an extra resource, right? And so even if you are matching them one for one, you know, for instance, you each just boom, 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 remove the other person's card as you're going, then suddenly I play a card that's a normal card, and they play a card, but their card has additional power because it interacts with the energy. Now, it might have been able to work if those cards were fairly costed, but they were not, right? For instance, Rogue Refiner is a great example. Or Rogue Refiner or, you know, Long Tusk Cub, right? When you add up their mana cost and what they can do, they outperform regular cards at those same mana costs. So that's a, you know, pretty major design error right there. I would think, and it seems like a lot of people are on board with that. So the issue there is that it seems like Ixalan, I really liked the Amonkhet block. I thought it was great. I think Ixalan is really cool too, but, you know, people are whining about Ixalan being underpowered. But the fact is it had to start somewhere. If the cards in the follow-up sets to Kaladesh could compete with them, then we would have a power, what's it called? Power, you know, the race to the top. I can't, you know, whatever. The word's not coming to me right now. But where each one has to be more powerful than the other in order to get played with it. But Ixalan actually seems like a much more balanced design. You know, the only thing maybe they could have done is print more cards that actually, like, hated on energy, like Solemnity, because that's one card and it's in white. It's only in one color. So, like, maybe it really hates on it. Maybe it doesn't. I've had people tell me, like, oh, yeah, Solemnity shuts down energy. But I kind of come to the example of, well, if it really did, wouldn't the pros be playing it? And they're not. So, right? Maybe it does, but to me, the evidence isn't there because the people who play a lot more than I do and spend a lot more time playtesting than I do are not choosing to play it. So the saddest part about where things are now, to me, is that Amonkhet will never get its time to shine. At least a few cards from it are you know, important, like Glorybringer and the Scarab God, but its time to shine would have been if Kaladesh had, after Kaladesh rotated out, but they're going to rotate it out at the same time. So that might be when Ixalan, people start realizing that Ixalan is pretty cool, and these tribes actually do something, or not. But basically, it seems to me Amonkhet block pretty much screwed because it has to hang out with Kaladesh. But then it also brings us to that weird design thing where Wizards kept changing how they were going to do the rotations and stuff. So, because originally I think they probably designed Amonkhet with the thought that Amonkhet was going to rotate out, and like there was going to be a time when Kaladesh and Amonkhet weren't in there together, but that's a whole other weird thing. Which actually makes me think about how maybe I should make another video about what I'm about to say, but just generally speaking, I think Wizards has been too quick to pull the trigger this last year. Like, why didn't they've done a thing, they've announced a thing, and then they've like pulled back on it like months later. Like, why wouldn't you let, you know, if you're gonna try something new, let it happen? Because they created just as many problems. Like when they announced the new rotation schedule, and people didn't like that, by rescinding it so fast, seems like they created just as many, if not more, problems, because then you had Gideon Alav Zendikar in the format longer than it was supposed to be. Amonkhet was designed with the intention that eventually, you know, Kaladesh would rotate out, and then Amonkhet would have its own time to shine, but that didn't happen. So all that, and then like the masterpieces being in and the masterpieces being out, like, I don't know why they wouldn't take the simple stance of saying, like, we're going to try this thing and we're going to see how it does, and then we'll reevaluate, which seems like the smart thing to do rather than just shooting from the hip all the time. So, which also applies to the thing with the Pro Tour time change. Although I think there's probably enough evidence to decide at this point that the later Pro Tour and the cutting down of information on the league results was not enough to affect the metagame. If anything, it actually had the reverse effect of making the metagame get more solved, if you will, not solved quicker, but more solved before the Pro Tour. So I think we have our evidence there that was a that didn't work. But I'm okay with them trying new things to work around it. I just hope they have like smart people in there doing actual research before they pull the trigger on these things, right? And not just making emotional decisions or just guessing. It's like you got to have real, actual information, people, before you make big decisions like that. Okay, so have I made a point? Let's see, foil-based glance coming over here. Have I made my point? So my original topic was how to enjoy your game. And I think I got to the point. I think I got the point across that I feel like metagame, having the metagame be so important is detrimental to your game because it takes away from variety and it takes away the individual's ability to affect the game, essentially. So I've gotten that point across. But now that I've said all that, it's also a question of, I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to solve that problem. So it's like a problem that exists, and I think that they need to take steps to try to alleviate it, which they are, so I support that. But I don't know what can be done about it. But I think it's important, some people say don't bring up problems unless you have an answer. Well, the fact is I'm just bringing it up so we all talk about it and hoping we can find an answer, right? I'm not sitting back here going like, oh, this is a problem. But you know what? I don't know what the answer is, so everyone quit Magic the Gathering, burn your cards, blah, 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 right? Burn your Warhammer figures. It's not at all what I'm saying. I can actually bring this around. I'm glad. When I can ramble on and then bring it back around to my original point, I'm proud of myself. Because it comes back around to my original point of like, since all these problems exist, what do I, as an individual player, do to make sure that I'm having a good time playing the game? And the kind of thought that I came up with recently is I just want to have a good time playing the game. So what can I control about that? I mean, my attitude about how I go in. But also the simple fact, I thought, I don't know if I can make a logical statement about this, but basically I just came to the idea, like, what if I try to make sure that my opponent is enjoying themselves? Because when my opponents aren't having a good time, that is generally when I do not have a good time. I think there's people that I like to play games against because I feel like win or lose, we're going to have a good time playing the game. Because of their attitude and the way that they play the game. And that's who I want to play against. So I'm thinking I would like to be more that person, where whatever is happening in the game, I'm not going to let it get to me. And how can I make sure that me and my opponent, no matter whether they have a bad attitude or not, or is a jerk, we are enjoying the game together. And that's just kind of a thought that I had, that how I was going to approach the game in the future, whether or not it works out, is going to be, that's what I'm going to find out in the near future, but that was the conclusion I came to kind of get me back from feeling bad, from the feel bad world of gaming, is that if I focus, this is kind of an experiment, I guess. You could say it's an experiment that I'm going to try when I play games. Is if I focus on my opponent having a good time, my gut tells me that I'm also going to have a good time, and that's what my gut tells me. Whether or not that turns out to be true or not is going to be, that's what I'll find out. So. Yeah, probably rambled on for enough time now. Hopefully got some points out of here that make some sense. And thank you all for listening.